Right you are then. So to wrap up my final thoughts on my opinion about whether the demons actually have a sex drive, I want to go back to the time of Noah, and they were known as the fallen angels because they were once in a sort of privileged and favoured position, and they had the freedom to roam about and to express this freedom within the heavenly realm. And they became the fallen angels when they sort of usurped the small authority that they had at that time, and they started to look at the daughters of men on the earth. And it wasn't just a quick glance, was it, at what the humans were up to. It was a prolonged voyeuristic look that they had, and wondered what it would be like to have sex with the daughters of men. And they then gave birth to this great sin, knowing full well that the sovereign Lord of the universe at that time would not have been happy about them doing this. So what this tells me is that they must have had a sex drive. They just simply wouldn't have disobeyed such a powerful person as the sovereign Lord of the universe, namely Jehovah. They wouldn't have disobeyed him unless they had a driving emotion, something making them do it. So that's why I think that they must have had a sex drive. The fact that they continued to look at the daughters of men and then found a way to dematerialize and take human form so that they could then come to the earth and have sexual intercourse with the women of the earth at that time. And the results of that sexual intercourse was that the offspring that were born were known as the Nephilim. And the Nephilim were not just ordinary humans, were they? They were the spawn of the fallen angels and the daughters of men. And so they were giants amongst men at that time. And so Goliath apparently was a descendant of the Nephilim. So where did they really go wrong? Was it this prolonged voyeuristic tendencies that they had? They just didn't casually look at the daughters of men, did they? It wasn't something casual. It was something prolonged. It was almost akin to the way David was observing Bathsheba. He wasn't casually looking at her anymore, was he? He looked at her with lust in his eyes, and his intentions were that she would become his at some stage. Now, is this what happened with the demons? The angels that they were at the beginning, before they became fallen angels, did they look more intensely? Did they look with envy? Did they think that humans were in a favourable position because they could experience what it was like to have sexual intercourse? Okay, just to change the subject slightly, I'm just going into one of my warehouse contracts in a place called Wakefield, Castleford, in the Yorkshire area. Now it might get a bit dark in here because I think the emergency lighting's on and we need to see where we're going. Hopefully it won't be too dark though. I'll have a bit of a walk around. It's rather a large warehouse. And what I normally do when I come here, although today I can't do because all the pumps are out of commission, but what I normally do is I service these valves, and that's known as a wet set. And this one here is an alternate valve. So in the colder months, from sort of September onwards, this would be put on air. So that's why it's an alternate. You can have it 6 months of the year on water and 6 months on air. And that's how it's got its name. And that is reflected with it being an LPC requirement and not an FM, not a factory mutual. LPC is the Loss Prevention Council, and that is European standard. Okay, a little bit about my job, and now to go back to my opinion about why I believe that the demons must have had a sex drive, and they must have had, to have this sex drive at this early stage, they must have had a lot more than that, because it was enough to make them disobey Jehovah God. They thought it was worth taking that risk to disobey him, because he would have known that he would not have been happy about them having these lustful intentions. Does this mean now that if I can firmly prove and establish that they did have a sex drive back then, that the ones today who are full-blown demons, and not just your fallen angels that were once trusting angels and then they became disobeying angels and known as fallen angels, does it mean that the ones today, although they can't have sexual intercourse with the daughters of men, does it simply mean now that they can get their gratifications from observing and being voyeuristic and sharing to some degree in human depravity? I've had a few answers back, and these answers are quite interesting. And someone's saying to me, oh, demons don't exist. And some are saying that demons are within the person, the individual. These are very, very interesting observations. What do I think about it? Do I believe that the demon world exists? Yes, I do. I've always felt that there's a battle between good and bad. I've always felt as if at one time there may have been one happy big family in the heavenly realm, but somebody drove a division, and that person who drove that division was Satan, and he took it upon himself to build his own little empire and took away those angels that were differing and not happy about serving Jehovah at that time. So that has still continued to this day. We still have an army of good angels and we have an army of bad angels. Okay, so that's my little walk around with you, and you can see the place is quite big. Give you a bit of a pan round there. You know what, I must get a gimbal as well. I'm thinking of getting a gimbal to get much smoother panning shots. At the moment I'm just using the steady shot on the Sony X3000, which is pretty cool. You know, it's a good little camera, and it's an ideal sort of vlogging camera. You can hold it at full arm's distance like that, and you can put it on a larger stick and hold it in an aerial position like that, and it's an excellent camera for that. And that's about it really. You know, sometimes I'll have something to say and I'll say it, and I don't mean to upset anybody when I do say these things. The last thing I'd want to do is upset anybody, because I know that quite a lot of people have been through an ordeal and a very stressful situation with their former religion, and the last thing I'd want to do is to add to that anxiety. I wouldn't do that at all. That would not be anything that I would do on purpose. So if I have upset anybody with any of the videos that I've done, the last one about the demons, it is not my intention to do that. I'm just being completely and utterly transparent and seeking these answers, and you guys are providing me with some answers, and that's great. So I'm sort of, you're helping me in a sort of roundabout fashion, and I can get an angle on these things.